I'm Bar Counsel for the CMBA. Our Hot Talks happen each month on the second Tuesday of the month. The idea is to bring us together, to have an opportunity to exchange ideas on a variety of topics. Our Hot Talks are broadcast each month on Facebook Live. So if you're joining us on Facebook, I want to welcome you. And if you were with us last month, we talked about the hashtag #MeToo movement. And in the last couple of months, we've talked about things like LGBTQ rights in Ohio, the opioid crisis in Northeast Ohio, and human trafficking, topics of critical importance to our community and to our nation. I am delighted to have this distinguished panel with us this morning that I'll introduce in just a minute. We're going to be talking today about the role of the legal profession in preparing for civil unrest. I know that we have some lawyers with us this afternoon. If you've not thought about the role that you might play in building relationships and preparing for unrest, then I hope that you'll be inspired by what you hear today. Our program is approved for 1 free hour of CLE. You don't have to be a CMBA member to get credit, but you do have to be with us in person today to get CLE credit. So I'm happy to have with us today Cleveland Police Chief Alvin Williams, a 30-plus year veteran of the Cleveland Police Department, and he's going to be talking about what Cleveland has done so well to keep our city safe and to maintain peace, even in some really difficult times. And then we have 2 guests from Columbus, 2 friends of the CMBA. Jill Snitcher-McQuain on the end is the Executive Director for the Columbus Bar Association, and Carl Smallwood is a partner with the Columbus office of Worry, Sater, Seymour, and Peace. And I'm so delighted to have all of them today with us to talk about this important topic. So the format of our program is this. In about a minute, I'm going to turn to the Chief and give him an opportunity to speak to all of you. And then Carl and Jill are going to speak, and keep your smartphones out for that portion. They are going to do some live audience polling. And then in about 20 to 25 minutes, we're going to invite all of you to be part of the conversation, and we'll open it up for Q&A. And for those of you that are joining us on Facebook Live, you can also submit comments. We have someone monitoring those comments. We will try to get to all of your questions. And you should also be able to participate in the live polling, so watch for those instructions in just a little bit. So Chief Williams, I'm going to start with you, and thank you again so much for being with us this morning. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks for the invite, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Cleveland has been in the national spotlight a few times over the past few years for some really amazing things and for some not good things. 2 years ago, our beloved Cavaliers won a national championship.
Yes.
And we had the biggest parade that the world has ever seen in Cleveland. And then a month later, we hosted the Republican National Convention. And just down the street, the Rock Hall is about to induct a new class of rockers. So there's some really great things happening in Cleveland.
Yes.
But in the last few years, we've also had some real tragedies in Cleveland, and we've had police shootings involving citizens, really tragic circumstances, and we have had the elements that other cities across the city have had that have led to some real unrest. I think of Ferguson and Baltimore and Stanford, but we haven't seen violent unrest in Cleveland. So talk to us about what the Cleveland Police Department has done so well over the years to maintain peace and to keep us safe in Cleveland.
Well, again, thanks for the invite. I don't think there's anything special that the Division of Police has done over the last 2.5, 3 years. I think it was a combination of a lot of things that have been embarked upon by a lot of our partners, a lot of our city partners within city government, community relations, the mayor's office, city council, as well as a lot of outside partners, both in law enforcement and outside of law enforcement. But we took the track early on with First Amendment activities to make sure that we, first of all, embraced First Amendment activities, that we knew that our role was basically to provide a safe space for people to exercise their First Amendment and Second Amendment rights also in the city. And we took a different approach than most law enforcement agencies have done, I'd say, over the past 20 years. And that was the up close and personal approach, not to be overbearing, not to have that, a lot of people call it a militaristic look about our officers when we're interacting with people in protest activities and First and Second Amendment activities. And I think it paid dividends for us because people weren't, quote unquote, as intimidated by our officers. We had conversations with folks doing a lot of these activities. And it's not that we didn't have issues. A lot of people recall during the reload trial and that officer being found not guilty, we had huge protests throughout the city. And that culminated in probably about 75 people that were arrested. No real violence, but we did have a couple of issues during that protest. Leading up to that, we had taken a stance, again, to be up close and personal, to make the environment safe on both sides for both officers and participants in that activity, as well as any counter protesters that may show up, and as well as the general public, because a lot of people get involved not through any fault of their own, or just by happenstance, driving down the street, and all of a sudden, here's 300 or 400 people walking down the street either towards you or blocking your way. And so we had to take that into consideration when we engaged in our policing tactics at these events. And again, we took the tact of allowing people to express themselves while keeping everybody safe, up close and personal, not officers out in what at the time was termed a riot gear, but it's actually personal protective equipment, not having those officers out visible, but having that available if need be, kind of in the wings if things did go sour. And we took the initiative also to talk to people before a lot of these protests to get their kind of insight as to what they wanted to accomplish that day. There are, believe it or not, some protests that happen where people actually do want to have a certain segment of their members get arrested. They want to make a point. And if we know that up front, then there's less, I guess, conflict during that process because we can kind of work with them to identify folks, let them do whatever it is they're going to do to, get arrested within bounds, of course. And then we can effect those arrests without any fuss or fuss, without any use of force, and then people going about their way. So we took that approach early on, and again, I think it's paid off for us.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for sharing with us some of the behind the scenes that's been happening with Cleveland Police. Carl and Jill, Columbus has also been in the national spotlight. I know that there was a young teen that was tragically killed by police not too long ago, and just 2 months ago, there were 2 Westerville police officers that tragically lost their lives. So Columbus is maybe not that different from Cleveland, but your bar association, the Columbus Bar Association, has been actively engaged in preparing for Unrest. Talk to us about the Columbus Trust.
Thank you very much, Heather, and it's great to be here to have this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in Columbus. As you said, people think, these things don't happen in my backyard, not in my backyard, but the truth is it's happening in all of our backyards. The incidents that visit Cleveland and St. Louis, Ferguson, and Baltimore visit Columbus, Ohio just as much. So we'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about one of the responses the Bar Association's legal community has taken in Columbus. But if we could, I'd like to ask a couple questions. I'd like to get you involved in this process by polling you about some of the attitudes and identity of the Cleveland community. So Heather, if you could let us do that, and we'll talk about what's happening in Columbus and have a conversation.
Yeah, so behind us we have the first poll for our audience, and you can join the poll if you are sitting at a computer. You can go to pollev.com/DCP1, or if you have your smartphone there at your seat, you can send a text to the number 37607 and text DCP1, so Divided Community Project 1, DCP1, text that to 37607, and then you're going to answer this question. Does the Cleveland area have an identity that cuts across any community divisions, conflict between various groups within the community, and deals constructively with differences? So your choices are A, yes, the identity is clear, B, I think so, or C, no, this needs more focus. So go ahead and enter your answers now.
Heather, could you read again one more time how to text and to where?
So you're going to send a text to the number 37607. You're going to text the letters and number DCP1, so Divided Community Project 1, DCP1, text that to 37607.
We're beginning to get some responses. Good. Here's where you're working. You know how often you get asked to take out a cell phone and participate in a COE program. So great. The responses seem to be indicating that many of our participants believe there is an identity that cuts across community divisions, but that this is an area that needs more focus. I guess at this point it's 39%, but I think so, and 61% would know I think this needs more focus. Interestingly, so far no one has said the identity is clear, which again is something we find in most of these kinds of surveys. So let's go on to the next question, Heather, if we can. Again, all you're going to be doing is essentially texting A, B, or C in response to this.
Well, actually, this is an
I'm sorry, this
open-ended
one is a narrative. You can actually type in. I'm sorry, the order is great. What is the Cleveland area's identity? How do you identify this community? Your community. You can now type in an answer. And as some of you are thinking about, yeah, how do we? Again, you said this. Last question was, it's not yet so clear, so it'll be interesting to see what we get here as a response. Reverse. East side versus west side versus everyone else. Resilient. We get various responses to this question. It's intentionally a little bit vague. Small in many ways and needs forward-thinking politicians. Young Midwestern town, so young Midwestern town. Cleveland versus suburbs. Multicultural, blue collar, mostly safe. Sports strong, tough. Very interesting. Okay, and again, what you are seeing is different viewpoints about what this community's identity is. Some that would provide a segmented view of the community, and that of course sets up the possibility of divisions that may then come in conflict with each other. Let's move on to the next question. Does the Cleveland area deal constructively with division when compared to other communities? So when some of these divisions within your community come into conflict with each other, divisions among, you didn't in the last question get a whole lot of difference in race or income or religion or immigrant status, but I imagine those communities exist and divisions within those communities exist in the greater Cleveland area. But as you think about those differences, does Cleveland deal constructively with those divisions compared to others? Okay, and again, by about a 3-2 margin, the area needs more focus and attention. It seems to be the more common response. But there is a response that this is one of the community's strengths. And that's certainly where the community wants to be. So let's go on to the next question. Specifically in dealing with these, constructively with these divisions, what is your perception about the police working collaboratively within the community? We're going to ask two questions here that are going to be somewhat related to parts of the community dealing with agencies within the community. So keep voting. Very good. Okay. And this seems to be somewhat split. About half say it operates well in the community. A quarter say it needs more focus and attention, and a quarter say it's one of the community's strengths. Again, you're going to find different perceptions between the communities. Depends on whether you live in the suburb and your police community relations are excellent, whether you live immediately outside that and perhaps the relationships aren't quite the same, or whether you live in a different community where the police community relations aren't exactly as you might hope they would be. Let's go to the next question. Again, this asks how Cleveland deals constructively with division. Specifically, this one focuses on public agencies, whether there are processes and informal practices in place to address divisive issues, the kinds of divisive issues that might lead to civil unrest in a community.
Chief, we should have got you a mirror so you can
Yeah.
see what's going on there.
And keep voting. All right, and this is one of those again where the audience seems to feel this is an area that could use more focus and attention. Okay, let's go ahead and get two more questions. This is very helpful to us, and I hope helpful to you as well in illustrating what the views are within the community. Is the Cleveland area ready to deal with volatile situations stemming from community division? Okay, and again, this one seems to have a split primarily between members of the audience who believe this needs more focus and attention and those who feel it operates well in the community. Although when you combine the second category with the third that says it's a major strength, that seems to work. The perception seems to be that's working pretty well. Now let's go on. I think this is maybe the last question, Heather. Does the Cleveland area have an early warning system to communicate about developing concerns? What does the community use to listen? To be proactive. We'll talk about social media, absolutely. Okay, has everybody had a chance to vote? Okay. In terms of the early warning system, again, the majority believe this operates pretty well in the community, either as a strength or that it operates well. But there's a 40% of the respondents say that the area needs more focus and attention. Thank you so much for participating in our poll. It gives both us a little bit of information about where you see your community, and perhaps it gives you a little bit of feedback on how members within your community differently perceive your preparedness for issues that divide the community. As Heather said, we've had issues that happened in our lives in Columbus, Ohio, that were tragic and that brought communities into conflict. And about 2 years ago, in conjunction with the Divided Communities Project at Ohio State, the bar associations in Columbus, the Columbus Bar Association and the John Mercer Langston Bar, which is the historically Black Bar Association, Columbus National Bar Association affiliate, began to collaborate to look at ways to assist our community in addressing divisions within the community. And to give you a sense of Columbus, we are, I think, now the 14th or 15th largest city in the country. We have the second largest Somali population in the country. We have, as a result, a significant Muslim population in the country. We have a significant gay population in the country. We have a number of income inequality is an issue in our community. And while it is a great place to live and there's a deep reservoir of goodwill about Columbus, we recognize that there are opportunities for communities to come into conflict. And so the question was, is there an entity, an organization, an honest broker in Columbus who might reach out to the community to build trust among those various communities? And that's what we sought to do. We call our effort Community Trust. I think Heather has put behind us on the board the aims of Community Trust: to convene community stakeholders, to develop a better understanding of the issues that divide us, to build trust among and between them so that they get to know each other at times before something happens that challenges trust in our community, so that when something occurs, we are better prepared to communicate and to attempt to address the issues that divide us. To prepare our community to respond in resourceful ways, and ultimately, as well, to develop some shared plans in the event that the issues that divide our community and challenge trust get to a point where you might have civil unrest. But it is a proactive effort that we've undertaken. We'll talk about it in a little bit more detail. I wanted to try to keep us within time. And Jill?
Yeah. So the Divided Communities Project through Ohio State University approached our board about being a convener. As Carl mentioned, sort of a trusted organization, if you will, that can bring together the interested parties, however broad they may be, without an agenda. And that's a critical component of what we're doing because, like Cleveland, we recognize that we've been fortunate not to have the civil unrest that may have occurred in Baltimore or in Charlottesville or in Ferguson. And so we look at what we're doing right, and we look at not taking that for granted. We don't want to accept that, boy, we've been lucky. Let's see what we're doing right, and let's take this as an opportunity to bring together all the folks who have an interest in keeping our community a place where you can have civil unrest without having any severe consequences related to that. It's been two years, I think, in the making that we've been working on this, and it's gone through quite an evolution because just as you start to scratch the surface about what the issues might be that are percolating in your community, you realize how many more folks that you need to engage in the conversation, because this isn't a top-down discussion. This isn't a plan, if you will, that says, this is how the community should react when these things happen. This is a conversation. This is a sustained conversation that doesn't just stop when our task force is done. This is a conversation with community leaders, with law enforcement, with lawyers, with judges. There's so many different moving parts to this, and you can't ever be dismissive or forget about the other cultural issues, the community issues that run very deep in our communities. So through this process, as the convener, as the Bar Association, we're just bringing everyone together. We've not set an agenda that this is what you will come up with, this is what you should do. We want to bring people together to have that conversation, to figure it out, so that we are not in a reactive mode when something does arise. And I think our community's been very fortunate, as I said. So we started with a task force of a finite number of individuals representing community leaders, law enforcement, and the like, and lawyers. And also lawyers as mediators, because it's a big part of what we do as lawyers is bring folks together to talk about solutions. So we bring together a small group of folks who have tried to at least identify some of the issues on the surface. And from there, it quickly grew to a larger working group of folks, which has expanded even from there to more community-wide initiatives. We've now appointed 5 different task forces within our initiative. We've got a set group of individuals looking at readiness. They're the folks who are identifying what does preparedness look like? What are we trying to accomplish here? What is the role for the community leaders, and what are the various communication approaches we need to look at? We have a task force that is looking at future concerns. These are the folks who are out in the community who are understanding what the pulse points are in our community. Where is there a potential for unrest? And knowing that is a big part of the growth of how we will move forward. So they have a methodology for being out in the community and learning more about what the community concerns are. We have a task force that is dealing with resilience. Ultimately, that is our goal, is to build a more resilient community. So they're sort of working to bridge where those divides might be and help us understand as a task force what we can do to shape those concerns or deal with those concerns. We also have a task force that's representative of youth and education. As the chief said earlier, social media is a huge part of what tends to percolate in our communities. It's made organizing events so much easier, so much faster. So we see a lot of that, and we need to understand how that evolves if we are going to be able to respond to that or to deal with it in a more proactive way. And our youth are very socially engaged in our communities. So we want to be sure that we are engaging with them in this process as well. And then the 5th task force that is a subset of our initiative is the communications task force. They're working with community leaders to find out who needs to be talking to who, whether it's the media, whether it's community leaders, elected officials, whatever the case may be. Let's open the lines of communication to make sure everyone's talking to one another.
Thank you. We will open this up to Q&A in just a minute, but I want to give the chief an opportunity to talk about how Cleveland is using social media and how I think you mentioned that has something to do with the early warning system that we have in Cleveland right now. How's that been helpful to you?
Well, as people know, social media kind of drives a lot of what happens in our cities today. It wasn't like that, probably as much as 5 or 6 years ago as it is today. And we have a team of folks that, whether it's during a special event or a critical incident, that basically monitor and participate in social media. We do have an early warning system, so to speak, but it's really an early warning system. It's not, I think what Carl and Jill are talking about, a preference to things that are going to happen. It's basically, this is happening. It's called Code Red. It's an app that you put on your phone. But I really want to talk to Carl and Jill after this, because a lot of things they're doing in Columbus, we started in pieces and parts here in Cleveland, the Global Cleveland, the One Cleveland Initiative, a lot of other things that we're doing at City Hall. But we haven't gotten to the point where we're putting those different pieces together in a comprehensive strategy that looks at getting out in front of a lot of these things. I mean, we've been lucky. And we've kind of been able to learn from other people's mistakes, so to speak, whether it be on the East Coast or the West Coast. And we were able to adjust our planning, our preparation, because of some of the things that happened in different parts of the country before things started to ramp up here in Cleveland. But again, I think what these guys are doing in Columbus is kind of a model that, we always say in Cleveland, we're not opposed to stealing a good idea and making it our own. So I definitely want to have some more conversations with them. But I think it boils down to basically getting out in the various communities of Cleveland. We were talking about what defines Cleveland. There was diversity, there was Northeast Ohio, East Side versus West Side, and they're all true. That's us. We're Northeast Ohio, but we're different sides of town here in the city. We're the suburbs versus the city. We're all that. And until you can actually get out to those different communities and talk face to face with folks, and I think that's, to be honest, what I don't want to say saved us, but I think that's what allowed us to get out in front of a lot of things that have happened in the city. Myself, the mayor, different community leaders, different council or other organizations actually going out and talking to people face to face and not trying to, think about what that community may want, but actually going out and talking to them and finding out, all right, what is the issue here? And that in and of itself is probably the biggest first step that, communities can take, or leaders can take to understand what's going on, actually walking and talking to people face to face.
We do at the CMBA, we have a community trust task force that is kind of working the steps of what Columbus has done. I'm glad we could make a match here with you, Chief, and with Carl and Jill. Ian Friedman is the chair of our Community Trust Task Force. Ian is here with us this afternoon. And we would really love to, as an association, to be involved in this process. We did go through the steps of meeting with community leaders, and just like you said, Chief, one of the themes that kept coming up in those meetings was that we have to go to the community. We have to go and meet with them. They're not going to come and meet with us. We have to go to them. We have to listen and learn about what's affecting them in just their day-to-day lives. So we'd love to collaborate with you on that. So let's go to our Q&A segment now. Any questions for Jill or Carl or the Chief? Are any questions coming in on Facebook Live?
Good question.
Maybe we'll get you next one.
Well, I'd like to thank the two of you for coming. I appreciate it. I'm Ian Friedman, and I've been working with Heather on the task force. My question is, we started the task force with a decent number of lawyers from the community that were real gung-ho and getting going on this. And then quickly, we started to lose interest. And this is a huge topic here today. My question to you is, when you were setting it up in Columbus, how did you get interest throughout the community? Because to me, I'm happy everyone's here today, but this place should be filled. Because the only time anyone gets upset about is when something happens. And that's what we can't do anymore. We gotta get ahead of it. So how do we get that interest ahead of the critical situation amongst public agencies, lawyers, people, and so forth, the conveners, and the community members?
Thanks for that question, Ian. Jill or Carl, who would like to respond first?
Well, good.
Yeah. We went into this process truthfully not knowing what to expect. We knew what we wanted the end game to be, but we had no idea how long it would take to get there or who we needed to engage to get us there. So it's been a very slow and deliberate process on purpose, and we had some of the same concerns that you shared. We don't want people to lose interest in this. We've been very fortunate that our working group is representative of the various religious communities, of the cultural communities within Columbus. So we have lots of different moving parts that are a part of that. And I think we were, frankly, a little timid about going about it that way. because there are politics at play. We went through an election where we sort of were stagnant for a minute because we didn't want this to become a political issue. We didn't want it to become part of folks' campaign or even the inference that it might be something political. It's not that. It's about representing the good in our community. And there are times when we have some frustrations about, are we moving fast enough? There's so many things happening in our community. Are we going to regret that we haven't done enough if something happens? But in hindsight, I think our approach has been very sound, and patience is incredibly important because no one wants to feel like this is a bunch of lawyers shoving this down our throats. What do they know about what actually happens in my community every day? So I think our task force, under Carl's leadership, has just done an incredible job of being persistent in a thoughtful way. And I think we talked about this at our last meeting. This isn't a task force that issues a report and goes away. This is something that permeates our community for years to come, and it's always going to be changing. So we have to be prepared for that. This isn't something where there is a true end game, if you will. It's about a sustained approach.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. If your initial group was a group of practicing lawyers and individuals who came to this for that reason, you're right. Some of those will fall away. As parts of your community, as parts of our community, have learned about the existence of community trust and its purpose, and as Jill said, that we don't have a particular axe to grind. We're not a political animal. Members of the community have seen this as something that doesn't currently exist in our community, that offers some incredible potential to create relationships where none exist, that help us to identify people who speak with authority for individuals in our community who don't have a voice, but need to be heard. And this is going to be a little bit like farming. I mean, it's not a quick fix. It's not reactive to the last thing that happened in Columbus. It's proactive and looking ahead to trying to listen and hear and respond to the next thing that could happen in Columbus. So I'll give you one tool, though, that exists as well, and that's a simulation that was created by the Communities Project at the Ohio State University Lawrence College of Law. It's a simulation that is based on an immigration conflict in the community. Events have been unfolding in the community that have brought students into conflict, parts of the community into conflict, the police and the immigrant community into conflict. And it is set, much like a national security simulation is set, it's set in with participants who are essentially city leaders, public safety officials, and others. And it is set to run on a Friday afternoon, with the mayor having to make an announcement at 4 o'clock, and at 2 o'clock the simulation begins. And then things unfold in real time. And as things unfold in real time, it can get exciting and it can get complicated. But the simulation exists and it can be used by communities. It is a preparedness tool that helps communities assess whether they are ready to deal with this kind of situation. We've run it as a committee. The city of Columbus has run it. Other communities have run it as well, and it's available if, for example, your committee would like to give it a try or offer it to the city of Cleveland to try. It helps assess essentially, where things are working very well in terms of public safety response, and where there may be opportunities to create relationships and conversation that will serve us very well in the next potential conflict.
Just a couple brief comments to add to that. One thing that we've kind of found is that police can't run these types of organizations, city government can't run them, our association can't run them. It has to be a community kind of melding. You have to go out to those community groups that are out there, those street clubs and their presidents and the community relations board meetings and the different CDCs and all those agencies, and you have to kind of morph them into the things that you're actually doing out there, because that's the only way it's sustainable. A prime example of, from a law enforcement standpoint, at all the big conferences that law enforcement attends, the ICP, leadership chiefs, global, things like that, at some point during that 3, 4 day, 5 day conference, there's a town hall meeting. And for whatever reason, that town hall meeting is always packed with law enforcement. So we're having a town hall meeting to talk about the issues of the community, and the community's not there. It's us. We're talking to each other. We're preaching to the choir. And the last conference I went to about a month ago, I brought that up to the organizers of the conference, and we're having Major City Chiefs and International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference here in October in Orlando, and I brought it up to them because they were looking for basically panelists and workshops and things like that. And I said, we have another town hall meeting. You have every major chief across the country and some across the world, because the International Association of Chiefs of Police has people from Australia, New Zealand, London, Canada, you name it, Virgin Islands. And if we have all those leaders in one room, why are we talking to each other? We need to invite some people from the community so we can actually hear what they're talking about, so they can hear what our plans and reactions and things are to things that happen around the country, so we can all get on the same page. Because what we may think our reaction should be, they may say, no, that's not the way to do it, Chief. You guys need to do X, Y, and Z, because we're out there and we hear what these guys are saying and these groups are saying, and this is how you need to interact with them. So I would say you got to bring more of the community into it. You have to make them a part of the organization. They have to be the organization, not the organization kind of, bringing something to them and molding over them. They have to be what it is themselves.
Great. Do you have another question here in the audience?
I have a question. Hi, Joe and Carl. Welcome to Cleveland. Following up a little bit about what the chief just said, a question I have is, when you have task force meetings, are they out in the community? Where do you convene your task force? And also, do you have any media partners? Have you done anything in major media and social media related to this?
The meetings of the task forces have occurred in various locations. Some of the participants, nonprofits, and other participants in courts and private organizations that are stakeholders in the community, participants in community trust, and they have hosted meetings. So they've been in a number of places, and obviously we do listening as well. So now the second part of the question was partnership with major media. And the answer to that at this point is no. A lot of the work has been preparatory to that. We are listening at this point using social media and obviously major media to listen, but we have not been as proactive about pushing our existence or our activities in media. A number of the stakeholders are very aware. The city government leadership is very aware and connected to our effort. But no, we did not, despite the fact that there were some members of our community, some stakeholders in our community whose view it was, you should, announce this and say we're here. There were others who cautioned, let's build this out. Let's establish, credibility with individuals who need to become connected with us. And it's quite clear that this is not fully baked. As Jill said, we don't have a report written, and now we're reaching out to stakeholders in the community to say, sign on to the report. This is about bringing stakeholders together in the community. And so, as I said, in some respects, I've been perfectly comfortable with the way this has evolved and continues to evolve. And I hope that will permit individuals who are not particularly looking for the limelight to speak to us about their concerns with the
The question right here, down front.
Chief Williams, you say that talking face-to-face, getting out into various communities is the biggest first step you can take to prevent civil unrest. What do you think is the buy-in? Do you or do you not have buy-in from your rank and file for that type of outreach and policing effort?
I think we do have the buy-in. I think things like the convention, like the CAS parade, and like a lot of the other protest activity that we've had here in the city of Cleveland, where we, again, are up close and personal with folks. I think it serves a dual purpose to give our officers the confidence and also kind of breaks down that barrier a little bit that they can be face-to-face with people that maybe, really vehemently oppose what they do as a career and come out of that and not get hurt. And come out kind of unscathed, and then 2 days later do it again, and then a week from now do it again. So things like that have enabled our officers to know that yes, we can have personal space with somebody you can disagree with. It's not always an adversarial type thing. And to be honest, a lot of the things that have happened in Cleveland, a lot of the parades and a lot of the marches and things like that, at the end, people are shaking hands with officers saying, thank you, thanks for keeping us safe. We had a little dialogue, we still disagree, but we did that in a peaceful, semi-respectful way, as these things go. But it gives our officers that, I think, better connectedness when they're out there on their day-to-day activities. Because they know, a person can stand right in front of your face and yell and scream and shout, and then at the end of it, we can actually have a conversation.
Thank you for that question. I'm delighted to have Ideas Stream with us today. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Right here.
Hey, Chief, going back to you. You said earlier something that I thought was really interesting, talking about one of the things that Cleveland does well is avoid over-militarization in the police force. And that's something I've seen a lot of studies that show over-militarization leads to escalation of conflict, both because it dehumanizes both sides and sets up this barrier. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts about that issue within your force.
Yeah, great question. I think it starts with, it really starts with the appearance, the outward appearance of an officer. Again, I talked about the riot gear versus personal protective equipment versus our regular Class B uniform. 10, 15, 20 years ago, if there was a protest or a march in a city, there would be a cordon line with police officers. And the people demonstrating, exercising their First Amendment rights would probably be 20 yards away. And that's how we set it up. That's how we traditionally have set that up. And you're right, it's easy to kind of have that facade on both sides, and it's easy to throw a bottle from that far to an officer or to shoot tear gas from that far to protest participants. It's harder if we're this close together. When we're walking and we're talking and we've kind of found that if you do that, 9 times out of 10, things are okay. But you have to do that and preference it, and we do, with some ground rules. You know, our 2 main things are no physical violence of any kind, and no property destruction. Other than that, you can march all over the city. You know, you can sit down in doorways, you can block traffic on public square, you can do that, because in a city this size, you know, there are a dozen roads that we can route traffic around. So if you block this one road, it's not going to bring the city to a halt. You know, if we block a major freeway, you know, we had people block Route 2 early on in the winter of 2014 with the Tamir Rice protests. They blocked Route 2, a major thoroughfare for the city, and we knew they were headed there. So we got officers out to Dead Man's Curve, out to West 28, and we rerouted traffic and cleared the freeway before they even got to the freeway. And we let them have the freeway. And they sat there in the middle, you know, December in Cleveland, next to the stadium with the wind, and, you know, about 45 minutes later, everybody's ready to leave because it's too cold. But we let them do what they came to do, but we didn't disrupt anybody's lives. There was one person caught up in that protest on the Shoreway, a female nurse from the clinic, and they surrounded her car. That's the only car that they kind of got to and before we could clear the freeway. And they weren't violent or anything like that. And I walked up to the lady and she rolled down her window. I said, you know, we can clear a path and get you out of here. I got enough officers, we can do that. And she said, no, I'm fine. I got my coffee, I'm warm, I got plenty of gas. You know, they're not doing anything, let them do what they're doing. And that kind of summed it up. We don't have to arrest you just because you're blocking the street. We don't have to arrest you just because you have signs and you're yelling and shouting and you're blocking the entrance to a hotel. I'm sure the hotel has other entrances that people can come and go from. So for the 20 minutes that you're going to block that entrance, we can deal with that as long as there's no violence, no property destruction.
Any other questions, anything coming through on Facebook that we need to address? Okay. Well, I want to thank this wonderful panel. Thank you, Chief Williams, for being with us. Thank you for your leadership in the city of Cleveland. And thank you, Carl and Jill, for being here, for traveling up from Columbus today to talk about the wonderful work that you're doing with the Columbus Trust. It's really terrific stuff. So please join me in thanking our guests this afternoon. All join us next month on May 8th. We're going to be talking about how we create safer communities, and part of that conversation is going to be about the gun control debate. So we'll see you next month on May 8th. Thank you all so much.